Intern, and she is also going to walk us through some thoroughbred breeding, Mike, because I tell you, short of Fusaichi Pegasus, that's about all I know about breeding.
Well, yeah, well, we're harness people, and I mean, we love to bet thoroughbreds, and we do that all the time. But breeding the thoroughbreds is an art. I mean, betting thoroughbreds, I think, is really a lot different than harness in terms of, I think it's more angle based, and I'm excited to talk to Avery about it and see what she has to say. Because listen, Penn National, Presque Isle, in my opinion, very tough tracks to wager on. But you know what? If you can figure it out, I think there's money to be made.
Avery, let's talk a little bit. You're obviously one of the young guns in the sport of horse racing in general, and the sport needs a lot of younger blood, obviously. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved and how you got tied up with the PHRA.
So I am a self-made racing fan. I didn't have any family or friends. I didn't even grow up with horses. So I've been a fan for about 9.5 years. I got involved when I was 12 years old when the Secretariat movie was in theaters. I actually read the book before I saw the movie because I was that type of kid that needed to read the book first. And I'm really glad I did because obviously I learned a lot more with the book. And then I was just a goner after that. So I've been working with PHRA since May of last year as an intern. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot of stuff, especially about harness racing, because I have mostly been thoroughbred up to this point. So it's been really interesting and it's been a lot of fun.
All right, as we discussed, we're going to talk a little bit about breeding. We're going to talk a little bit about pick fours, pick fives, pick sixes, all that jazz here a little bit as well. And we are also going to talk about the 54th pace for the Orchids, as you see behind me. Obviously, a wide open field. And Seth, I promised I wouldn't talk too much about this, but obviously, Mike, with Poppy Rob Hanover not entering due to an injury. How about that mile, though, last week, 147-1. I think a lot of people thought he could go a little bit faster than that.
Yeah, we get robbed as harness racing fans. I mean, we just completely get robbed. I mean, here is a superstar in the making. Yeah, here's a superstar in the making, Mike. I mean, this horse was just really special to watch. And, I mean, obviously his career taken way too soon. But now he's going to, go to the breed shed. And I'm going to tell you what, I've seen a lot of people that are going to be interesting in some Poppy Robs coming up. So they're certainly excited to see his children race. But you know what, though, Mike? It is what it is. And I'm going to tell you what, though. If you look on the bright side of things, this is going to create for, in my opinion, what is going to be a wide open betting race now.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into the Adios a little bit later on. I know Seth wants to give away a PHRA swag bag. We're got a couple of trivia questions that we're going to give to our viewers over the next hour or so. We're going to kick things off with the first one here. The Wager Warriors PHRA swag bag giveaway, some Adios trivia. Dave Palone has been the leading driver at the Meadows for decades. What horse has he only won it once, Seth?
Yeah,
he's only won the pace for the Orchids one time. Wow, that's amazing to me.
That's amazing because he's got 20 million wins in his career.
That's right. For those who don't know, Dave Palone is the winningest driver of all time, and obviously still racking up that total. So to think that he's only winning the Adios one time, it's pretty amazing. But what horse did he win the Adios with? You can submit your answer via the Facebook feed, correct, Seth, underneath, or send us a message. So make sure that you submit your answers below. Did you know you can submit your wagering picks to the PHRA and show off your skills and be a guest wager warrior? For more information on that, head to the PHR website. All guest wager warriors will receive an awesome swag bag. For more information, visit pennhorseracing.com. That's pennhorseracing.com. All right, let's dive into the breeding aspect. Harness racing versus thoroughbred racing, a handicapping standpoint. There's a lot of differences, and obviously breeding is something I think some people look at. And Avery, I'll toss this question to you because I know in harness racing, I look at the mare more so than I do the sire when I'm looking at that. Because obviously, with the thoroughbreds now, with the 140 mares bred cap, harness racing has had that for a while. 140 horses is a lot. And so it's hard to gauge kind of what sires can do. So for me anyway, it's all about the mares, what they've produced and what they can produce going forward.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a good broodmare can move up a stallion no matter what. I know for me, I love to just look to see if there's especially with 2-year-olds, young horses, maidens, I always like to go and look at what the dam is produced and even what the second dam is produced to know who the first dam is a half sibling to or whatnot. Because oftentimes you can get a lot of information just based off of what has been in the direct family in terms of distances they've won at, the type of track surface, track condition, all that fun stuff. And usually these mares are pretty consistent. If they're good, they're good, so it can be a big help to look through in terms of what they've produced already.
Avery, let me go ahead, Mike. I did have a question this is one of the things I wanted about thoroughbred racing because I kind of know the answer for harness, but I mean, obviously, as the horse's career goes on, and you start to get some race lines, you start to get a gauge of the horse's overall ability. The breeding kind of starts to take a back seat with each and every line. So let me ask you this: when do you believe that we have to? At what point do you believe that we have to start paying more attention to the horse's racing lines versus the actual breeding of the horse?
I mean, I feel like once they've established themselves and really begin to prove themselves, I do think, like you said, it does begin to take a back seat because, I mean, a good horse can come from anywhere. So, I mean, once they reach that class level, if they remain consistent at that class level, I think that they've already proven that they're capable of it. So by that point,
it's funny. It's funny, Avery. We were talking a little bit about the sires a minute ago, and an interesting stat here: sires, and some of these sires and this is from the thoroughbred side. Some of these sires are some big names: Triple Crown winner American Pharoah, Bodemeister, Carpe Diem, Congrats, Flashback, Flat Out, Golden Sense, Malibu Moon, Munnings, Outwork, Shanghai Bobby, and Violence. You ready for this? A combined 0 for 97 with their 2-year-old debut runners this year. That's a wild stat considering horses like American Pharoah, I think a lot of people were expecting to just kind of rock it out of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm based off of American Pharoah's first crop especially, he definitely came running out of the gate his first year. It has seemed that his 3-year-olds have been a little bit slower to get going, which is really interesting because, I mean, he was a champion 2-year-old and he was a champion 3-year-old. But it has been interesting to see kind of how his crops have progressed because his first crop was fantastic. He's doing well this year with his second crop, but it does seem they're a little bit slower to get going. And so, I mean, it's just really interesting because oftentimes you can see a freshman stallion who does great that first year and then they kind of struggle after that. And I mean, especially in the thoroughbred industry, you need to prove yourself pretty quickly. It seems like a lot of thoroughbred breeders are pretty quick to move on. They give you that first couple of years, and if you're not knocking it out of the park, you really start slipping down in a lot of people's lists. And but yeah, I mean, I'm surprised, but that list that you said, I didn't realize that's pretty interesting.
Avery, where do the mares start? I mean, like a lot of people pay attention to the sires, and we know a lot of the big name sires, not only in thoroughbreds and harness, but I think a lot of times the mares, unless they're a really big name mare that have, maybe have won the Kentucky Oaks or some of the other big mare races, may slip under the cracks. Mm-hmm. As handicappers, how much attention are we supposed to, in research are we supposed to do on the mare side? How important is that?
Well, especially for mares that are unraced, I usually go, like I said, I look into the direct family, I look into her siblings, and even her second dam and what's been produced from that line. Because, I mean, there are some great race mares that just have a hard time as brood mares. Like, just look at Zenyatta, for example. She was one of the the greatest race mares of
Right.
all time, and she still has not produced a winner. So it really does. The mares are so interesting because it really does seem like it can be a complete hit or miss.
Fun fact about Zenyatta real quick. Do you know that her half, I'm going to make sure I say this, half sister was Winx? They had the same sire. Zenyatta and Winx had the same sire. Not half, but same sire. That's interesting.
Same sire, yes. Yeah, because he was down in Australia for a time, since we do a lot of the shuttling on the thoroughbred side. I'm not sure how if that is common in the harness world.
Yeah, there is. You see horses like down by the seaside, and Always Be Mickey. I think McWicked is headed to the Southern Hemisphere, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. Seth, I believe you got a question or two.
Yeah, the first question: what is the biggest difference between? Wait a minute. What is the biggest difference between incorporating pedigree into thoroughbred handicapping versus standard bred?
I think Mike will let you touch that one first.
Me?
Mike.
Oh.
Seth, you were breaking up a little bit. What was can you repeat the question, please?
What is the biggest difference between incorporating pedigree into thoroughbred handicapping versus standard bred?
This is a tough question, because I'm going to tell you, when you start comparing thoroughbred handicapping to harness handicapping in general, I'm out. I'm off the boat, because I don't think you can. I mean, thoroughbred handicapping in general to me is angle based. You can have a horse that raced 20, 30, 40 lengths out last time in the thoroughbred race, and actually you can come back considering the set of circumstances and wager on that horse versus a harness horse where, listen, if he finished 20, 30, 40 lengths out in his last race, I'm pretty much pitching him and eliminating him. Not so much the case for thoroughbreds. So Mike, in my opinion, I don't think there really is any comparison.
Well, it's tough. And Avery, I'm going to toss this one to you here in a second. Obviously, there's different types of surfaces, as one of our comments have come through here. Different types of surfaces in thoroughbred racing. There's a lot more to consider. That's
right.
But like Avery
Turf,
said
dirt,
earlier, when you're looking at some horses, it's not always just as set up as the first dam. In my opinion, you have to look sometimes back at the second dam and the third dam.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, especially like yearling sales and stuff, I usually look down through the third dam. I don't really look past that, because I feel like at that point you're just kind of, it's too far away.
It's too much, right? Yeah.
I definitely, especially first and second dam, and then sometimes I will look down into the third dam.
Thanks to Stuart Powell for watching with us. He's letting us know that an American Pharaoh colt actually sold at New Market. His name was Breeze Up a couple weeks ago. Sold for 400,000 guineas. I'm not sure what that is in US, but sounds like a big chunk of change. So, it's interesting to me anyway. And it's funny you mentioned Zenyatta, because Zenyatta is by far my favorite thoroughbred racehorse of all time. She was she deserved to be horse of the year 2 years in a row. And sorry for you Rachel Alexandra fans out there, but anyways, it's funny you mention about Zenyatta, because there are some horses that do extremely well on the racetrack, and then they get to the breeding shed and it's like, whoa, what happened here? And you don't see it happen as much, I don't think, on the thoroughbred side, and correct me if I'm wrong, Avery, as you do on the harness side. But on the harness side, there are some that go into breeding and you say, you know what, this isn't working out for me. Let's go back to racing.
I mean, me personally, I've seen a couple instances where that's happened. There was actually, she was a Pennsylvania bred mare. I forget who she was trained by, but she she was racing on the same card as one of her foals, I think, up in New York one day. So that was the one instance that I do remember, because it was really cool. She had her 2-year-old debuting, and then she was racing in allowance later on the card. But outside of that, I personally haven't seen mares return to the racetrack after breeding. Sometimes they'll get bred at the beginning of the year, and then they'll continue to race into the summer, and then once they're a few months into their gestation, then they'll end up retiring from racing so that they can have that full. But I mean, in terms of returning to the racetrack, I haven't seen it that often, but it does happen sometimes.
What about sires?
With your big money stallions, no, unless they happen to be subfertile or infertile for some reason they're unable to breed, then sometimes they will return. I've seen a couple regional stallions. There's a stallion down in Florida who bred the first half of the year and then he returned to racing the second half of the year. But again, that is pretty rare. Probably not quite as rare as the mares, but
we'll talk a little bit about how that is in harness racing here in a minute. Make sure you follow the Penn Horse Racing on social media, where Wager Warriors give away free past performances. Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, one harness and one thoroughbred per week, correct?
Yes, we'll have Harris Philadelphia on Sunday this week and Parks on Monday.
Harris Philadelphia and Parks, as our man Rich Matei calls it, Mike. Each week, again, we share the PPs. For more information on that, visit pennhorseracing.com. Mike Carter alongside of Avery Levanti and Mike Bozich as we talk a little bit about breeding in handicapping. We're also going to be talking a little bit later on about the Adios, the Super High Five is guaranteed. We'll talk about guaranteed pools. We'll talk about lateral wagers, pick fours, pick fives, things of that sort a little bit later on in the telecast. And Mike, we were talking with Avery just before that short little break there and asking about sires and dams and if they come back to racing and if they don't and what have you. But one thing about harness racing, and we'll bring up the Corral rule here, a lot of these sires either have to, at least in the U.S., to be eligible for certain stakes, either have to either A, breed and race, or race past their 4-year-old season, or be injured in some way to be taken out of that. But a lot of horses, like, and I'll use Bold Eagle as an example, he was a Breeders' Crown champion, but what a lot of people don't know about Bold Eagle is he actually has some babies that are on the ground while he's still racing.
Let's see. I was wondering, with 746, I was wondering when this would come up because I knew it was going to come up pretty quick about stars leaving the racetrack too soon. I know that's where kind of you were going with that, Mike.
Well, somewhat, but more so the fact that the difference between overseas breeding and the U.S. breeding from a harness standpoint, because overseas they breed and race at the same time.
Yeah.
And in the U.S. you don't see that as often.
No, certainly not. But I do have a question for Avery. Avery, you know, one of the favorite things, I mean, people love rags to riches stories. People love the fact that you could actually get in this game and buy a horse for a couple $1,000s, and every once in a while, whether it's on the thoroughbred side or the harness side, these horses do good things, and that's kind of cool. That's kind of awesome. Avery, any horses that you could remember that weren't necessarily the best bred on the thoroughbred side that went on to great success?
The first one that comes to mind is California Chrome.
Of course. Of course.
Of course. Especially in recent memory. You know, he just, you guys, friends, weren't involved in racing, bought a cheap mare, bred her to a cheap stallion, and he won the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, Dubai, 2-time horse of the year. You know, it doesn't get much crazier than that.
No.
$1,000.
All right, let's get the answer to our first trivia question real quick. The first trivia question, Dave Palone has won every race known to man just about, but he's only won the Adios one time. And Steve Conway gets the first prize pack. The correct answer was Washington, D.C. in 1999 for Ron Coyne Jr. And I believe I saw Ron Coyne's name somewhere in the program. Maybe that was the other day at the Meadows. I think he's still training.
Yeah, he is. And guys, here's a fun fact for you. Ron Coyne won the first race ever at Harris Philadelphia.
I didn't know that.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow, Ron Coyne Jr. So
every once in a while, Mike, I'm good for a zinger. Every once in a while, I'm good for one of those hidden facts. I don't have many, but you know.
That's good. So congratulations to Steve Conway for knowing that
Steve.
Washington VC defeated Blissful Hall in the 1999 Adios. And I believe Seth has another Facebook question. By the way, before Seth goes, don't forget you can submit your questions below in the chat. I've got it up and Seth's got it up, as well as making sure that you can submit them via message. Seth's got access to the to it all, so he can read your messages. Feel free to send him a message as well. We love to hear your questions. And Seth, go ahead and bring up the next one.
This fits good with Presque Isle opening this week, but for thoroughbreds, what should you look for when a horse is making its first start on a synthetic surface that is from a family with no synthetic experience?
I tell you what I look at, and then I will deflect to Avery here, and she might tell me I'm dead wrong. So this might actually lead to an interesting discussion. Turf numbers. If you're a daily racing form person, I look at the turf figure in these situations. I really wish they would come out with a synthetic number per se, but I guess you haven't really been racing on synthetic, and there hasn't been enough. I mean, there's not enough tracks racing on synthetic or Tapeta or the poly track or whatever they're racing on to really come up with a number like that. But for me anyway, the turf number is important when I'm handicapping those types of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best angle, because thoroughbred racing tried to use synthetic as an alternative to a dirt surface, and we realized very quickly that it kind of played more like a turf surface than a dirt surface. I mean, it was an Irish invention where they are predominantly turf racing. So, I mean, I guess we couldn't be too surprised that it did play more like a turf surface than a dirt surface. So I would definitely say using turf numbers and anything in the family that has, if anything in the family has had turf experience and turf success, then I think that's a pretty solid angle.
You know, one thing about horses making their first lifetime start, and me and you know, a couple of buddies of mine, we love when it rains at a track and there is a field of first time starters, and we always laugh about, you know, the saying is, we hope you hope your mother was a mudder, because obviously, you know, when they're on the track for the first time, you don't ever really know what they're going to do. But those numbers, the mud number is huge in thoroughbred racing, and I know it's a pretty effective number.
Yeah, and kind of going into turf, oftentimes turf horses seem to do well on muddier, sloppy surfaces for some reason. But yeah, I mean, if a horse has a good mud number, or they've had experience and success over mud in the past, or even their sire had success over mud in the past, damn, you know, that's a pretty good sign that they'll be just fine. I mean, there's lots of stallions who are notorious for doing well on sloppy surfaces, their offspring doing well, like City Zip, Hard Spun especially, who was a Pennsylvania bred. But usually if you have first time starters out of those stallions on the dirt, that's pretty solid to go with their offspring.
You know, and in the thoroughbred game, you know, there are horses that may do well on the turf and may do well in the dirt, but a lot of horses like that don't really do well on both. But who remembers Barbaro, who started his career on the turf, won the Tropical Park Derby before going on to win the Holy Bowl, then back to win the Florida Derby before winning the Kentucky Derby. And we all remember the story of Barbaro. But, you know, from, you know, obviously it's a sad story what happened towards the end. But looking back at his career, the things that he did, you know, or tried to do was just amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you could kind of say that was his dual ability was thanks to his sire Dynaformer, who is one of the best stamina influences in recent thoroughbred memory, in my opinion. I mean, if you have a horse with Dynaformer, somewhere in their close family, that horse can run for days. And I mean, turf racing often is where the majority of our long distance racing is nowadays. So Dynaformer had a lot of success on both services, and I think that really helped a horse like Barbaro and his offspring.
Avery, here's I got a real quick question for Avery. I'm sorry to cut you off, Mike, but
you're good.
Give us some of your, maybe some of the great mud sires that fly under the radar, and maybe some of the great turf sires that fly under the radar as well.
Mud sires? I mean, I did mention Hard Spun. I really do like Hard Spun for a mudder. Curlin's, they usually do pretty well. Curlin had his one son, Exaggerator. All of his grade ones were on mud, and he didn't hit the board on any fast dirt surface unless it had some degree of moisture in it. He won 3 grade ones over slop. He was second in the Kentucky Derby when it rained right before the Kentucky Derby. Turf. I really like English Channel. He stands at Calumet Farm, I think, for $30,000. He's a pretty under the radar turf stallion. He throws a lot of really nice horses. Other turf.
Way to give a plug there. I like that. we do a little bit of advertising on this show. We got to, we got to, play up the breeding farms a little bit.
I mean, we can kind of go using an angle for this. Like American Pharaoh has proven to be a very nice turf stallion, and he never ran on turf. His sire wasn't a turf horse. And I mean, I feel like that goes into the fact that he stands at Ashford Stud, which is the American branch of Coolmore, which is an Irish-based breeding and racing operation. So that just goes to show the power of the broodmare. He was bred to a large number of turf broodmares, and I think almost all of his stakes winners so far, except one, have been on grass. It really wasn't anywhere in his family. That's just kind of putting in the fact of the ability of what broodmares can bring to their sires. You would
like we've got. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all.
Finish your thoughts. I was gonna say, it looks like we got another question, but before Seth, we get to that, I want to talk to Mike for a quick second. Actually, you know what? We'll do the question first, but when we're going to come back to this discussion, because on the harness side, we're noticing sires like Muscle Hill and Captain Treacherous and Sweet Lou, and some of those top sires are producing at high levels as well. So, Seth, go for it, man.
Okay, what should I look for when handicapping a race with a first-time starter from a first crop sire?
First-time starter from a first crop sire. Well, I'm going to let you two take the reins on this one to kick it off. Avery, Mike, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Avery. I figured you'd throw this put at me, Mike. Yeah, you're a good man. You're a good man, buddy.
Honestly, one of my favorite things is analyzing freshman stallions each year. It's so exciting. It's like, who's it going to be? Who's going to come out on top? Because it's really interesting to see how they end up sorting themselves out, because oftentimes it wasn't necessarily the best racehorses. It's interesting to see, especially usually at the sales, there will be certain stallions that just have a buzz around them, whether it be how their weanlings looked, how their yearlings looked. Normally you can tell pretty early on which ones are throwing the good horses. So oftentimes I like to look at sale numbers and stuff like that. You can usually see who at least the breeders are expecting to be on top for, your first crop stallions and such. Like this year, not this time. He had $1 million 2-year-old sell this year. He's had a couple of nice horses so far. I believe he's on top for freshman stallions right now. I would have to double check that. But like Nyquist, Kentucky Derby winner, Frosted, Met Mile champion older horse. In terms of 2020, I know that they are really the hype horses right now. So oftentimes those sale numbers tell the story of what the bloodstock agents and the owners are expecting just based off of. Sorry, Seth.
One thing I tend to look at, you're good. One thing I tend to look at, and actually one of our commenters actually mentioned this, is the workouts, how they are working leading up to their first performance. It's tough because a horse, when you're handicapping these races, and like Avery and I were talking about earlier, you've got the turf number that you look at on, and say a horse is making his first lifetime start on the turf, and the turf number is like 180 or something crazy like that. You're wondering, man, what in the world are they like? Or what are they thinking here? Is this horse not sound on dirt? Is he not capable of doing dirt? And a lot of times what you'll see is in the workouts that they're just not working over the dirt surface very well. And that's how you might come up with some of your long shot plays. And Mike, we know you come up with a few long shot plays here and there, but that's how you come up with a few of those. I always say when you bet, you have to find the weakness in the public and play it. I'm
2 words when it comes to first time starters, guys. And I'm gonna tell you what, it's proven in harness and thoroughbred, toed action. That really is it. I mean, if there's a horse that is a first time starter, that's 4-5 to 1 morning line, and he's sitting at 20 to 30 to 1, forget about it. Absolutely forget about it. If you've got a first time starter that is 20 to 1 in the morning line, he opens up at 9 to 5, maybe drifts up to about 6 or 7 to 1. You better be careful. That's really how I kind of attack it, to be honest with you. But I'm not, something like Avery or I don't, especially for thoroughbreds. Now, Farness a little different for thoroughbreds. Not really into or don't. I'm not knowledgeable enough about the breeding, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna tell you what. Sometimes the tote board speaks volumes.
Interesting. All right, so some interesting talk there. We talked to Avery a little bit ago about some of the thoroughbred sires. Mike, let's discuss a little bit of the harness stuff now. Obviously, we've seen some what I would call almost super sires. You've got the Captain Treacherouses, and in the Meadowlands Pace, there was, I think, like 5-6 horses sired by Captain Treacherous. So it's really nice to see him kind of produce a strong crop of 2- and 3-year-olds following his amazing racing career. But not everybody's like that, obviously. Look at, as an example, look at the sire of Lather Up. And I'm trying to, it'll come to me here in a second. What that horse's name is. Oh, no.
Is it Del
Marvelous? In Commando. That was
well, and I'm going to tell you why. There's an interesting story because Gary and Barb Isles, okay, by the way, who name all of their horses after barbershops. So you okay there, Mike? They name all their horses after something in a barbershop. Barber pole, Lather Up, the list goes on.
Funny story.
But hold on. But Lather Up, that was supposed to be a sample from The Marvelous, and it was screwed up somehow. As a matter of fact, you go to our website at postttimewithmikeandmike.com, and you go back maybe a year and a half. We had Gary Isles on the program, and he talked about this at length, and it's a real interesting story, the story of Lather Up. So that was just a complete luck thing.
Yeah, Avery, it's funny that he mentions that. That we had a champion horse that it was a breeding mix-up.
It was a breeding mix-up.
And it was a complete breeding mix-up. And that doesn't happen very often, that when a mix-up happens like that, that you're going to see a champion. And the horse's name was not In Commando, it was I'm Gorgeous. But there's a world record holder at Northfield named In Commando. But
I'm Gorgeous he went on to race after he had, and you called a couple of his races at Northfield Park, Mike, after he had Lather Up. Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah, he actually, Corey DeArmond was the owner of I'm Gorgeous, and they sent him off to breed. And by the way, since Avery's going to give some plugs here, that I'm Gorgeous is currently standing in Michigan, of all places. It's currently standing in Michigan. So if you want to take a shot
at I'm Gorgeous. Don't make fun of Michigan. Stop.
I'm not
I'll hang up right now if you keep making fun of Michigan, you Ohio, whatever.
Listen,
Buckeye.
Listen, between Penn State and Michigan, I've got problems with both of you. Okay.
Okay. Well, I got to do a Penn State. Don't agree with Penn State.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about that. Mike, is there any lightning in the background behind you?
Oh, at Harris, Philly?
Yeah, is there any lightning? We hear, we know you like storms and all. Is there lightning behind you?
Where's the red click button at? Hold on. I can find it.
All right, Mike Carter alongside Avery Levanti and Mike Bozich as we talk a little bit about handicapping. All right, we spent some time talking about breeding and how we handicap the races there. Let's talk a little bit about the 2020 Adios coming up this weekend, Seth, if that's okay. We're going to switch gears and head to the Adios. And before we get ready to head into that and the super high five and stuff, obviously we want to talk a little bit about making sure that you can be a guest wager warrior and show off your skills. My script was taken away from me, thanks to Seth. All wager warriors get a cool swag bag from Ashley Eisenbell, who is in that photo. Seth, what's going on here? Why are you not in the photo? Come on, man.
I break the camera when I am.
Yeah. Ashley's a little bit better looking than him, Mike.
Jeez. Anyways, make sure you can be a guest wager warrior. Head to PennHorseRacing.com. So let's talk about the super high five.
First,
Mike and Avery, obviously. Oh, okay. I quit. See you later. Anyways, we got another.
Okay, Frank Miramati.
Right, we got another trivia question here. Adios Trivia in 2008, due to construction of the new grandstand and casino at the Meadows, the Adios or however Mike Bozich wants to say it, was held at Pocono. What horse set a world record in that elimination? I did not
That's
know
a good
this,
question.
by the way.
That's a good question.
What horse set a world record in the elimination at the Downs at Mohegan Sun Pocono, now known as the Downs at Mohegan Sun Pocono? Well, make sure you submit your answer via the chat underneath of here. You can send it to Seth via the PHRA page. Seth has all the answers, so make sure you get with Seth to enter in for the prize. It is a PHRA swag bag. We're going to talk about the super high five, and Avery and Mike can we come back to multi-race wagers, Seth?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about the high five, and obviously the high five is a wager that is kind of really took off with the jackpot wagers to kick off with. Obviously, Mike Harris, Philadelphia, has one. Avery, we've seen a lot of thoroughbred tracks go to them, and there are some thoroughbred tracks that offer them. They're $1 minimum, and they are rolling super high fives, and you see those carry over a lot more. But we'll talk about those here in a second. It is a mandatory payout day on a Saturday, and Avery, we live for mandatory payout days in the wagering world. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about it?
Well, mandatory payout day means that all the money in the pool has to go. So oftentimes if the pool is not hit, it will just roll over to the next day. And eventually, if it just keeps rolling over, they have a scheduled day where they pay out the entire pool. So that's the day that you really want to get your wagers in, because regardless, if you hit, you'll get a portion of the pool for split between everyone who hits. If not, if no one hits and you still win like 4 out of 5, you still get something, because they have to give away that money and start over.
Right. Yeah, Mike, this results in a negative takeout situation a lot of times, and that is a huge thing for horse players, especially in some of those takeout pools where, you know, you're losing 15 to 20% of the pool, but then you're having 40 or 50% added back in. A lot of those situations create a negative takeout situation and help inflate payoffs even with chalk.
I'm not the right person to tell about takeout, because I'm not, I don't know, like, tell the person that takes down the $20, $25, $30,000. Well, wait a minute, there was a negative takeout on it, so give me my $30,000 back. No, I know I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
The horse player, I mean,
I know what you're saying, and it affects somebody that may make this wager each and every day. But I listen. I'll just tell you this. When I was at Hazel Park, okay, we really wanted to attack the problems of the industry, and we actually went to a couple hundred of our best customers, okay, and we asked them, what would you like to see improved, not only in here at Hazel Park, but the sport of harness racing. You know how many times takeout was mentioned out of those 200 pieces of feedback? None.
No. Mike, negative takeout is only on mandatory pay days.
I understand I understand. No, Mike, I understand what you're saying. But I don't no.
Anyways, so my point is, so a lot of negative takeout is important on mandatory payout days, because, you know, your wager that might be $100 may actually pay $200 to $300, and we've seen that situation kind of play out over and over again in carryover pools where there is a lot of value. So Saturday afternoon at the Meadows, they have a mandatory payout in the super high five. Seth, let's roll to the next graphic. There is a little bit over $23,000. And as we roll to this graphic, you're going to find out that everybody's got a Twitter except for Avery. She's not with the times. We will talk about the Delvin Miller Adios here in just a second. But again, a $23,000 carryover with a $50,000 guaranteed pool. Lots of great wagering opportunities coming up on Saturday. And, you know, looking at this field, and we'll start with Avery, then we'll go to Mike, you know, it became a more wide open incident. Me and Mike are on the same wagon here, but Avery, you have gone to the 3-horse in this field. And it's an interesting play from post number 3 at Catch the Fire, the hometown horse. Mike Wilder gets the drive here for trainer John Ackley, and Catch the Fire, if he can manage to pull off a victory here, Avery, it'd be one for the home team.
Yeah, I mean, when I picked him, I did know the morning line, so it did end up being morning line favorite. I think he's 2-1, Seth.
Yep.
3-1.
3-1.
3-1. Yep.
Well, that's not even bad. That's not even bad for a favorite.
No, not at all.
It is a wide open race, but I mean, he did win his elimination, and he really didn't run terrible at the Meadowlands in his starts before the elimination. So he was wire to wire, and maybe he can do it again for the home team.
Mike, me and you both landed on no losing, and the trip that no losing got in the Adios elimination was absolutely just horrendous. He was parked 95% of the mile, tried to fight down the stretch, then had to deal with a horse going inside the pylons. I mean, he had just about everything that could go wrong, and he still managed to make the final and finish third. He was wound up being placed second, but no losing here. 7-1 on the morning line. There's definitely a value opportunity there.
I had a chance, Mike, to see this horse race at Harrah's Philadelphia a couple of times. That line, if you go back, and that's what I'm looking at on my phone now, back on the 10th of July, in that Pennsylvania Sire Stakes win to Captain Groovy and Team Bet, he was shuffled back to oblivion. The outer flow was king in that particular race, and he came through on the inside, and he basically outkicked horses that had momentum. That is a big angle for me. When you could actually come up the inside and you can outkick horses that actually have momentum coming down the stretch, that means you're getting it done. I've just been super, super impressed with this horse. I don't hardly put any stock into eliminations. He made it. That's good. That's all I want to see. I'm looking at lines down the road. And you know what? And keep in mind, in that Pennsylvania Sire Stakes race, Mike, when he won that race, he went off of 5 days. 5 days layoff, which tells me that win back on July 5th, Nancy Tactor said, you know what? I've got something here. And she put no losing in that Pennsylvania Sire Stakes race and just responded fantastically. And now with the scratch of Poppy Rob Hanover, it's just a wide open event. I'm not buying Catch the Fire at 3-1. Captain Midnight I could certainly see because he's got experience with, and that's the horse that you picked in the Meadowlands Pace, right, Mike?
Yeah, I picked Captain Midnight in the Meadowlands Pace, and you talk about a horse that had an awful trip in the elimination was Captain Midnight in the Meadowlands Pace elimination, and then you got to think that the horse is either going to bounce in the final, or he's going to come back with a monster effort, and boy, did he ever bounce in the Meadowlands Pace final. He did not race well at all. Actually wound up being disqualified and placed 9th. I'm not exactly sure what the disqualification was for, but raced lights out in the Adios elimination. But one horse that a bunch of you decided to go with, and I have nowhere on my ticket, is number 4, the Greek Freak. And Seth, we're going to let you talk about the Greek Freak, but how about the story of Matt Kakali here? A couple of years ago, he had an accident at Yonkers before winning his first Adios 2 years back. And, the amount of emotion that he had in the winner's circle that day was amazing. So the Greek Freak is your top selection, Seth. Wow.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I threw him in second. I didn't know what to do with him. Originally, I had 3, 2, 5, 4, 8, and then I swapped back and forth a couple times, but I don't think he's going to get a 56-second half in here. But that was a big last half last week, and the 3 starts before that, and he's 5 for 4 in the year with one of those at the Meadows, the other one at Harrah's Philadelphia, but I still don't really know if I know what to do with him, but I put him second, and I was able to make a case, I think, for 8 of the 9 in here.
Now, Avery, a horse you used for second was the 8 Captain Barbosa, and this is a horse that I used for fourth. The Tony Alania trainee has kind of struggled over the past couple of starts. What do you see in him?
I'm just pulling up the
Come on. No, I'm just kidding. While she's pulling that up, do we have a winner yet for the trivia question? Maybe? Okay, nobody's prepared here. We're going to go with Avery. Yeah. We're going to go first with Avery. Go ahead, Avery.
I mean, to disclose, I am very novice when it comes to harness handicapping, but again, I was looking at the Meadowlands pace, and he actually finished ahead of Catch the Fire in that race. And I said that Catch the Fire didn't run that bad in that race, so I have to say that Captain Barbosa also didn't run that bad in that race. He was pretty. I mean, he was fourth in his elimination. Granted, it was behind Poppy Rob, but he wasn't very far behind, no losing. And he did go to the lead in that race, which was something that he hasn't been doing recently, so might have not been the best. I think they were trying to maybe figure something out with him, and probably maybe didn't work out as much as they were hoping. So I think he probably will sit back a little bit further than he did in his elimination, at least. I don't know. I was just trying to throw someone else in there that was kind of different.
All right. Mike Carter alongside of Avery Levanti and Mike Bozich. We're bringing you the Wager Warriors as we talk about the Delvin Miller Adios final coming up on Saturday. We have a winner in our trivia contest. Anthony DeFrancisco III gave us the correct answer. It was Shadow Play and David Miller and 148 and 2. 148 and 2. So Shadow Play and David Miller winning the Adios elimination that year. All right, Seth, now we're ready for the pick threes, pick fours, and pick fives and all that jazz. Okay. Avery, these are my favorite kind of wagers, as we found out earlier tonight before the broadcast. We won't talk about what happened at Rideau Carlton. But anyways, we'll talk a little bit about our pick threes, pick fours, and pick fives. And these are for the more experienced player, probably, but they provide a decent amount of value if you don't get all favorites.
Yeah.
As I found out earlier.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, like pick 3 races in a row, pick 4 races in a row, pick 5 races in a row. And I mean, I do like playing these bets because oftentimes you like multiple horses in one race, and this gives you the opportunity to play multiple horses to win in one race. It can get a little pricey. Obviously, you have to pay for every combination, possible combination that you have on your ticket. But I like playing these wagers because if you do hit a horse that's double-digit odds, maybe not necessarily high, but maybe around 10-1, that does increase the value a lot. And oftentimes it profits. Daily doubles, I love daily doubles. It's a great wager just to make a decent amount of money off of 2 races. It's not that expensive of a ticket, and often has pretty good payoffs if you can get in a horse that's between 5 and 10-1. It's always worth it, in my opinion. I love daily doubles.
No, for sure. They do present that, there's a whole nother value to daily doubles, especially if you can key in on a horse and maybe key off that horse, and maybe you back wheel the rest of the field for the second leg. Calculating the cost is pretty easy for coming up with the dollar plays. If you're doing pick threes, pick fours, pick fives, I know I'm taking some of you back to school, but say you use 3 horses and it's a pick 3 and you use 3 horses in each leg. You do 3 times 3, which is 9, and then times 3 is 27 for a buck. Depending on where you're at, there's 20-cent minimums, there's 50-cent minimums. Hawthorne Harness, on mind here, is a $2 minimum pick 6. So for a $2 minimum, see, that's what I mean. They have a $2 minimum pick 6. So for what you'll have to do is multiply it times 2 to come up with your price. So some interesting, when I sit down and come up with and I'm sure you've played the mandatory payout. Let's use the Rainbow 6 at Gulfstream Park, since I know PIA is watching. We use the Rainbow 6, and you're like, man, a 20-cent bet, I'm in good shape. And then you sit down and you figure out your ticket, and then you look at it, man, that's $300-400. What happened here?
Yeah. And I mean, especially once you have a lot of horses in there, for each one you add, it's just it just hurts more and more. So you really have to. I usually like doing pick fours. Pick fives and pick sixes for me sometimes get a little outside my budget. I try not to dump a whole lot of money into these because, I mean, oftentimes it takes a while to get like a big hit. Like they're few and far between. So I don't play like huge tickets. I normally keep them under $30. Because once you get 4 or 5 horses in, if you're doing like a full field of 12, if you have to use that many, it can get really pricey really quick.
One thing I like about pick threes and pick fours and stuff is if you find value, let's just say you go single by single by single, and then say you really feel strongly about those 3 races. Pick threes, pick fours and stuff allow you to play those figures multiple times, for $5, $10, $20, $20 investment on a 4 combination thing is what, $80? So, it's, if you find the right one, you could definitely hammer it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a little bit off track, but if you have a
That's
race
okay.
where there's a horse that is going to be a lock, or if it's going to be a heavy favorite, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, I mean, that's probably your best chance of making money off of that race. You can single in that leg, and then you can go in a little deeper in the other legs and hopefully make some sort of money off of that horse that is going to be a heavy favorite in that leg.
One of our questions here. In a race with a heavy favorite, what is the most profitable way to play an exacta, trifecta, or superfecta?
I don't care what anybody says. You can make money with a 1 to 9 shot. It is possible to make money with a 1 to 9 shot if you bet it correctly. Like Avery was just saying, exactas, trifectas, and supers, you have to be able to hammer numbers like that. At least for me, when I know there's a definite 1 to 9 shot, I am finding another horse that is going to finish second, and playing some sort of not crazy trifecta, but maybe a trifecta that has an 80, 70, 80, 9 to 1 shot in the back, because anything could happen.
Yeah, and that's what I like doing too. I love playing exactas and trifectas around a heavy favorite. And oftentimes I'll just pick a horse that if I think it has pretty crazy long shot odds that it doesn't deserve, I might just throw them in there because no harm, no foul. I mean, they're cheap wagers. If you do just box 2, 3, 4 horses, it's only a few bucks. If you hit, it's worth it. If you don't, it's not like you're worse for wear. But when they hit, it's usually pretty decent payout.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with that. Mike, we're talking about making money with 1 to 9 shots and how it's possible.
Yeah, well, if you're playing tries, and I'll tell you another thing too. A lot of times, and this is one thing I've noticed at Harris Philadelphia, a lot of times the superfecta will pay much more than the trifecta. And even for the 50-cent wager, even for the reduced wager, it's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm very surprised how many times if you pick a try, okay, and say, for example, you put, 1 or 2 horses on top, 2 or 3 horses second, and then you go 5 horses third. You'll be surprised how many times if you got a race that's pegged, that you pegged out that you really like, and you'd be surprised how many times the superfecta comes out and you've got the try, and the superfecta pays actually a lot better than the trifecta in a lot of cases. So don't be afraid to pluck a couple extra bucks down and just play the super instead of the try.
Interesting comments there, because I like to do that. I like to play supers and things like that with the 1 to 9 shots. One of the races that I made was one of my bigger scores was the year Wiglet Jiglet finished second in the Pepsi North American Cup to Wakazashi Hanover. We talk a lot about 1 to 9s and favorites and things like that who can win, but we don't talk about how often we can look at a race page and go, you know what, I think this horse is going to get beat. And I think, you see that, and that's, in my opinion, you got to hammer that even more.
Yeah, no question about it. And, a lot of times, Mike, what I like to do is I will play, like if I see there's a live long shot, but I do like the favorite, and I do think that the favorite's pretty solid. A lot of times I'll just put those 2 horses on top of the try. So in other words, if the favorite's number 2 and the long shot's number 3, I'll go 2-3, 2-3 all. I mean, I'll take a shot to try to beat that favorite with that long shot. And once again, you'd be surprised, especially if you dig down into supers, how much those things pay, especially if you can get the long shot to beat the favorite.
Exactly. All right, let's go back to our Seth. Let's go back to our Adios selections one more time. We'll talk about those. The 54th Pace for the Orchids is coming up on a Saturday. Make sure that you check out the YouTube and Facebook live feeds brought to you by the Meadow Standardbred Owners Association. Donnell Mock and Gabe Pruitt will have all the coverage action for you. 5 hours of coverage. I'm glad it's them and not me because I can't talk for 5 hours. Listen, if you ask anybody, they can barely listen to me more than if you have to listen to me more than an hour, your ears start to crack. Just ask my wife. But anyways, so let's talk about the Delvin Miller Adios final one more time. I'm going to go 5, 3, and 2 in the Delvin Miller Adios final. If I can find my program again, look who's not prepared now. I think I might have closed it out, but I'm going to go 5, 3, 2. Mike Bozich is 5-3-1. Avery's 3-8-5. Seth is 3-4-5. We're all right around the same numbers here. And a good friend of mine, Jeff Zidek, will call his first Adios this weekend. It's his first Grand Circuit stake. His Twitter handle is @MeadowsTV. Give him a follow. He likes 2-3-5. Jeff Zidek taking over for the great Roger Houston and Mike. That's no tall task.
Jeff's a great announcer, and he's a great guy. What a deserving chance for him to finally be the full-time voice after Meadowlands. And I'll tell you what, I think he calls a great race. He's got a heck of a voice. I mean, he has a voice that is just tailor-made for announcing and broadcasting, and I'm very excited for my friend and colleague, Jeff Zidek. And you know what? And he picks Captain Midnight. Honestly, Captain Midnight is probably the best horse in the race. I mean, if you could get 7-2, 4-1, 9-2, I mean, by all means, take a shot.
One of the trivia questions we had put in Twitter this week, nobody got. Jeff takes over for Roger, and he'll be the fourth person to call the Adios. Nobody's been able to name the other two yet.
Who were the other two? I don't even know.
Ken Kadar did the first one, and then Charlie Hinkle came back and did 2 of them before Roger took over in 76.
Charlie, the great Charlie Hinkle.
Yeah. He took over in 76, Roger Houston. That's 1 year after I was born. I was born in 1975.
You were born when?
1975. Not 18, so 1975.
1895. Got it. All right. So there are our selections for.
Where's the red click button?
Yeah, there's our selections for the Delvin Miller Adios final coming up on Saturday at the Meadows Racetrack and Casino. No fans will be allowed on site on Saturday. So obviously with COVID-19, some restrictions are put into place. Don't forget, you can submit your wagering picks to the PHRA and be a guest wager warrior. All guest wager warriors can get an awesome swag bag. For more information, visit PennHorseRacing.com for all the details. Avery, Mike, this has been a lot of fun and, insightful for me anyway.
Yeah, this is a cool thing. I mean, Avery, a great guest. I mean, she's awesome to have on, especially when you talk about breeding. A lot of great information, things that I certainly didn't know. Mike, as usual, you brought very little to the table. And Seth, you did and Seth, of course, you did a great job organizing it. No, honestly, in all kidding aside, it's been a lot of fun, guys. I hope we can do one real soon again.
All right. For Mike Bozich and Avery Levante, I'm Mike Carter. We'll see you next time.